Hey everyone, Chris Norman here. If I were to ask you the name of the book of the Bible that you would consider the most intriguing or maybe the most confusing or maybe the most frightening or maybe the most exciting or maybe even the most misunderstood, what book of the Bible comes to mind? Yeah, the book of Revelation. That's what I thought as well. You know, the book of Revelation is a prophecy for the future. It's the last book of the Bible. And it's the book of the Bible where God gives us just a glimpse into where this whole world's headed. Wouldn't it be amazing if you knew the future? Sometimes this world just seems out of control with no direction. Is there really a master plan that we're moving toward? Well, the book of Revelation is where we see promises of a new heaven and a new earth, that a future for every follower of Jesus, where all the brokenness of the world's been healed, where all the wrong things will be made right, where we will live with Jesus in paradise forever and ever. Sound too good to be true? Well, Jesus knew you might be thinking that, and that's why he said, write this down. These words are trustworthy and true. You might not know this, but let me tell you how the book of Revelation actually came to be. It's a fascinating story. So you may remember that Jesus chose 12 disciples, and of the 12, he chose 3 of them he spent the most time with, Peter, James, and John. Well, John wrote the Gospel of John and later became the leader of a region of house churches. And while he was leading all these house churches, he wrote letters to them that would circulate around the churches. These letters are known as 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. In fact, you may remember this past August we had a series looking at 2nd and 3rd John called Dear Church, Love John. As John was caring and shepherding these churches, we looked at what he wrote to them about. Well, John was eventually persecuted for his faith and carried off to one of the Greek islands. Now, I've been to the Greek islands. My friends and I did some island hopping when we were in college around the Greek islands. It's some of the most beautiful places in all the world. But I'm sure the islands aren't so beautiful when you are a prisoner there like John. So John was carried off to an island called Patmos. And while he was there and not allowed to leave, he had this amazing vision from God. And as he had this vision from God, it was like this download of imagery and prophecy and future judgments and future promises. And in this vision, he interacted with an angel and even Jesus himself. I mean, could you imagine what that would have been like? He wrote down all that God communicated to him during that vision. And he said, I want you to write this down. This is the book of Revelation. Now, Revelation's 22 chapters filled with all kinds of prophecy and imagery and promises. And in that prophecy, Jesus writes short letters to churches, 7 specific churches, encouraging them in some areas and giving them some warnings. In fact, if you look at the map here, you see the 7 churches and where they were all located. Now, what's so unique about these letters is that this is the only place in all the Bible where we find Jesus writing personal letters to churches. And it's incredible that we have a glimpse into what Jesus says to each of these churches. And so starting October 10th at all of our Grace Gathering sites, we're starting a 7-part series called Dear Church, Love Jesus. We're not going to go through the entire book of Revelation, but we're going to spend 7 weeks covering the letters written to the 7 churches. And we're going to hear some amazing things. And let me just say this, that this series, God wants to speak to you personally. He wants to speak to us collectively. Maybe God has given you a dream or a vision or some kind of revelation in your life. You know, God speaks to us in many different ways. Are we paying attention to how He's speaking to us? Well, this vision and revelation Jesus gave John is the greatest vision or revelation anyone's ever been given, and it's for all of us. Just consider for a moment, if Jesus were to write a personal letter to you with some words of encouragement or some words of warning, what do you think He would say? Or if Jesus were to write a letter to Grace Gathering, to our church, or maybe He were to write a letter to the church of Fort Wayne, what do you think He would say? Or maybe if He were to write a letter to the American church today, what do you think Jesus would say? Well, these are some of the things that we're going to consider as we begin this new series. I'm looking so forward to all that God is going to share. God's blessings to you all.